Let us talk about a recurring theme in European politics, the idea that Europe needs its own artificial intelligence. This is a claim we hear from Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, from the CEO of Mistral AI, from various politicians and tech executives across the continent. The message is that Europe is falling behind the United States and China in the AI race, and that this is an existential threat to European prosperity, values, and sovereignty. At first glance, this argument seems reasonable. The United States has OpenAI, Google DeepMind, Anthropic, Meta, Microsoft. China has Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba, ByteDance, DeepSeek. What does Europe have? A handful of startups like Mistral, DeepL, Aleph Alpha, and a lot of hand-wringing about regulation. The gap is real. The question is what it means and who it serves. From a Marxist-Leninist perspective, the framing of this debate tells us more about class interests than it does about technology. The call for European AI sovereignty is not coming from the European working class. It is coming from the European capitalist class, from the executives and investors who want a piece of the AI profit pie that is currently being gobbled up by American and Chinese capital. Von der Leyen is not speaking as a neutral arbiter of European interests. She is speaking as the political representative of European capital, pushing a program that would funnel billions of euros in public money into private AI companies under the banner of strategic autonomy. The EU has already announced plans to mobilize 200 billion euros for AI investment under what it calls the Invest AI initiative. This includes a new fund of 20 billion euros for gigafactories, massive data centers that will be built and operated by private companies. Let us break down what 200 billion euros actually buys. It buys data centers consuming as much electricity as entire cities. It buys thousands of GPUs manufactured by Nvidia, whose market cap recently surpassed the entire German stock market. It buys cloud computing services from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, who will be the primary beneficiaries of this infrastructure build-out, even under a European sovereignty framework. It buys consulting contracts from McKinsey and Accenture. Very little of that money will go to workers. Very little will go to public services. The vast majority will flow to the shareholders and executives of the companies that win contracts. Let us be clear about what this means. Public money, extracted from European workers through taxes, will be handed over to some of the largest corporations on the continent to build infrastructure that those corporations will own and profit from. This is not socialism. This is state capitalism, the use of state power to subsidize the accumulation of private capital. The rhetoric of digital sovereignty is designed to sell this program to the European public. Who could be against sovereignty? Who wants Europe to be a colony of American tech giants? The argument is that without European AI, the continent will be dependent on US companies like OpenAI and Google, which will impose their values, their pricing, their control over data and infrastructure. This is a real concern, but it frames the problem as one of geography rather than class. The problem is not that American companies control AI. The problem is that capitalist companies control AI, period. Whether the boss is in California or in Berlin, the worker is still exploited. Whether the data center is in Virginia or in Frankfurt, the profits still go to shareholders. The European Commission's AI strategy is fundamentally a strategy to create European tech champions that can compete globally. This is the same logic that produced Airbus, that produced the Galileo satellite system, that produced a dozen other European industrial policy projects. These projects have succeeded in creating profitable European corporations, but they have not improved the material conditions of the European working class. Airbus workers go on strike for better wages. Galileo is used by NATO for military purposes. The benefits of European industrial policy flow upward to capital, not downward to labor. Mistral AI is held up as the great hope of European AI. Founded by former Meta and Google researchers, based in Paris, Mistral has raised over €1 billion in funding and is valued at nearly $6 billion. Its CEO Arthur Minch appears alongside von der Leyen at AI summits to discuss European digital sovereignty. Mistral has positioned itself as the open-source alternative to OpenAI, releasing models that anyone can download and run. This has earned it praise from the tech community and from European politicians who see open source as a way to level the playing field with American tech giants. But let us look at Mistral through a class lens. Mistral is a venture capital-backed startup. Its investors include Andreessen Horowitz, Lightspeed Venture Partners, and the French state investment bank Pyfrance. These are not neutral actors working for the common good. They are financial institutions seeking maximum returns on their investments. The open-source strategy of Mistral is not an act of generosity. It is a competitive strategy, a way to build market share, attract developers, and commoditize the AI infrastructure layer while selling premium services to enterprises. This is a well-known business model. Give away the razor, sell the blades. Mistral gives away the models, but it sells the enterprise support, the fine-tuning, the custom deployments, the hosted API access. The involvement of the French state through Pyfrance is particularly interesting. France has long practiced a form of state capitalism where the government actively supports national champions through direct investment, subsidies, and preferential procurement. This is presented as a patriotic project, as France defending its technological independence. But it is class collaboration. The French state uses taxpayer money to de-risk private investment in AI, absorbing the losses while private investors capture the gains. This is not unique to France. Every European country does some version of this. But it is important to name it for what it is: the socialization of risk and the privatization of profit in the AI sector. The AI Action Summit where von der Leyen and Minch spoke is itself a revealing event. These summits bring together heads of state, tech executives, and a handful of academics to discuss the future of AI. What is systematically excluded from these conversations is the voice of labor. There are no union representatives at the AI Action Summit. There are no worker delegates discussing how AI will affect employment, working conditions, or wages. The assumption is that AI development is a matter for capital and the state to decide, with labor expected to adapt to whatever changes are imposed from above. The impact of AI on employment is one of the most urgent class questions of our time. Every major study predicts significant job displacement from automation. The McKinsey Global Institute estimates that by 2030, up to 30% of work activities could be automated, affecting hundreds of millions of workers worldwide. In Europe, the service sector, manufacturing, logistics, and administrative work are all vulnerable. The European Commission acknowledges these risks in its AI strategy documents, but offers nothing beyond vague promises of reskilling and upskilling. Reskilling is the neoliberal answer to every crisis of labor. The problem is not that your job was automated away. The problem is that you lack the skills to get a new one. This framing places the burden of adjustment entirely on the worker while absolving capital of any responsibility for the disruption it causes. The reality is that AI-driven automation under capitalism will not reduce working hours or improve quality of life. It will intensify exploitation. Workers who keep their jobs will be expected to produce more, faster, with less, monitored by AI systems that track every keystroke and bathroom break. Workers who lose their jobs will be thrown into a labor market that has fewer and fewer stable positions, forced into gig work, part-time contracts, or permanent unemployment. The profits from the productivity gains will flow to the shareholders of the companies that deploy AI, not to the workers whose labor made those gains possible. This is not a bug in the system. It is the system functioning as designed. Capitalism has always used technological change to discipline labor, to break worker solidarity, to drive down wages. The Luddites were not wrong to smash the machines. They understood that machinery under capitalism was a weapon against them. The same dynamic is playing out today with AI. The technology itself is neutral, but the social relations in which it is deployed are not. Under capitalism, AI will be a tool of class domination. Under socialism, it could be a tool of liberation. This is the class character of the AI debate. The questions that are asked are, how can Europe compete? How can we build sovereign AI capabilities? How can we regulate AI to keep it safe? The questions that are not asked are, who owns AI? Who controls it? Who benefits from it? Who is displaced by it? These are class questions, and they are systematically avoided in mainstream discourse. The concept of digital sovereignty deserves critical examination. Sovereignty in the classical sense means the supreme authority of a state over its territory. Digital sovereignty extends this concept to the digital realm, arguing that states should have control over their digital infrastructure, data, and technological capabilities. On the surface, this seems progressive. It pushes back against the dominance of American tech platforms and the extractive data practices of surveillance capitalism. But digital sovereignty, as articulated by von der Leyen and the European Commission, is not about empowering people. It is about empowering European capital to compete with American and Chinese capital. The EU's digital sovereignty agenda includes things like the GDPR, the Digital Services Act, the AI Act, the Data Act, and the Digital Markets Act. These regulations are presented as protecting European citizens from the excesses of big tech. And they do provide some protections, particularly around privacy and data rights. But they also serve to create a regulatory moat that benefits large European corporations at the expense of smaller competitors and foreign rivals. The GDPR is a perfect example. It was hailed as a landmark privacy regulation when it passed in 2016, and it has given individuals more control over their personal data. But it has also imposed massive compliance costs that disproportionately affect small and medium businesses while being easily absorbed by large corporations. The result is that the GDPR has entrenched the position of big tech companies that can afford expensive legal teams while making it harder for new entrants to compete. This is not a bug. It is a feature. Regulation under capitalism always favors the large players who have the resources to comply, creating barriers to entry that protect incumbents. The AI Act is following the same pattern. It imposes tiered regulatory requirements based on risk level, with the most stringent requirements for high-risk AI systems. The companies that are best positioned to comply with these requirements are the largest ones, the ones with the most capital, the most lawyers, the most lobbying power. Smaller startups and non-European companies will struggle. This is how regulation functions as a tool of capitalist competition, not as a tool of public protection. Now let us address the question of open source AI, which is central to the European AI sovereignty narrative. Mistral is celebrated for releasing open source models. The European Commission has praised open source as a way to democratize AI and reduce dependence on big tech. But open source under capitalism has a dual character. On one hand, it makes technology more accessible, allowing developers around the world to use and modify AI models without paying licensing fees. On the other hand, open source is used by large corporations to capture market share, commoditize complements, and build ecosystems that lock in users. Meta's release of Llama models is instructive. Meta gives away its models for free, spending billions on AI research and development. Why would a corporation do this? Not out of generosity. Meta does it because open source AI undermines the competitive position of its rivals while strengthening Meta's ecosystem. The more people use Llama, the more dependent they become on Meta's infrastructure, its cloud services, its hardware partnerships. The same logic applies to Mistral. Its open source strategy builds goodwill and market presence, while the company monetizes through enterprise services and hosted APIs. The debate about European AI sovereignty also obscures the global division of labor in AI development. The AI models that European companies produce are trained on data centers built with hardware manufactured in Taiwan, designed by American companies like NVIDIA, powered by energy from European grids, and operated by workers in data centers who are often poorly paid and heavily surveilled. The AI supply chain is a global system of exploitation that no amount of European sovereignty can address. The working class in Vietnam that assembles the GPUs, the workers in Finland who maintain the data centers, the content moderators in Kenya who filter the training data, are all part of the same system. European AI sovereignty does nothing for them. What would genuine digital sovereignty look like from a working class perspective? It would mean democratic control over AI infrastructure. It would mean that the data centers, the computing power, the algorithms, are owned and governed collectively by the people who use them and are affected by them. It would mean that decisions about AI deployment are made through democratic processes that include workers, communities, and the public, not through corporate boardrooms and closed-door summits. It would mean that the benefits of AI productivity gains are distributed to everyone, not captured by shareholders and executives. This is not the vision that von der Leyen and Mensch are offering. Their vision is one where European capital competes more effectively in the global market, where European tech companies achieve the scale to challenge American and Chinese rivals, where the profits of AI flow to European investors rather than foreign ones. This is a vision of capitalist competition dressed up in the language of sovereignty and independence. The class character of the AI sovereignty push becomes even clearer when we look at what the European Union is not doing. It is not nationalizing the data centers. It is not placing AI infrastructure under public ownership. It is not establishing a European AI service that is free and accessible to all citizens, funded by progressive taxation. It is not creating worker cooperatives to develop and deploy AI. These would be genuine sovereignty measures, placing the technology under the control of the European people rather than a handful of corporate executives and state bureaucrats. Instead, the EU is doing what capitalist states always do, using public money to subsidize private accumulation, creating regulatory frameworks that favor large incumbents, and wrapping it all in nationalist rhetoric to secure popular consent. The Invest AI fund of €200 billion will not be invested in public AI infrastructure. It will be used to finance gigafactories owned and operated by private companies like Mistral, Siemens, SAP, and their ilk. The profits will be private. The losses, if any materialize, will be socialized. We should also examine the timing of this push. The European AI sovereignty narrative has intensified precisely as the competitive position of European capital has deteriorated. European tech companies have struggled to achieve global scale. The European stock market has underperformed American markets for years. European venture capital investment is a fraction of what flows into American startups. The AI boom has largely bypassed Europe, with the exception of a few companies like Mistral and DeepL. The sovereignty narrative is a response to this competitive weakness, a political project to mobilize state resources in support of European capital. This is not to say that there are no legitimate concerns about American tech dominance. The monopoly power of companies like Google, Meta, and Amazon is a real problem. Their control over data, advertising, and digital infrastructure gives them enormous power over the economy and society. But the solution is not to create European versions of the same monopolies. The solution is to break up the monopolies altogether, to place digital infrastructure under public ownership and democratic control, to subject AI development to social planning rather than market forces. The argument that Europe needs its own AI to protect European values is particularly hollow. European values under capitalism include exploitation, imperialism, and class domination. The European Union is a capitalist club, an institution designed to facilitate the free movement of capital and the suppression of labor militancy. Its AI strategy will reflect these values. The AI Act, the Digital Services Act, all of these regulations are designed to manage the contradictions of digital capitalism, not to overcome them. They will impose some constraints on the most predatory practices of big tech while leaving the fundamental power. Relations intact. Mistral CEO Arthur Mensch has said that Europe needs to build its own AI to protect its cultural and linguistic diversity. This is a compelling argument on the surface. The dominance of English language AI models trained primarily on American data does represent a form of cultural imperialism. A model that understands French or German or Polish culture better, that can process more nuanced language, that reflects European sensibilities, is genuinely valuable. But again, the question is who controls this infrastructure and who benefits from it. And let us also consider the material foundation of the AI industry, something the sovereignty narrative conveniently ignores. The hardware that powers AI depends on rare earth minerals mined in the global south under appalling conditions. Cobalt from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where children work in mines for pennies a day. Lithium from Chile, where mining operations drain indigenous territories of water. rare earths from China, processed in facilities that poison workers and the environment. The global supply chain for AI is built on colonial extraction and superexploitation. European AI sovereignty does nothing to change this. Whether the chips go to an American data center or a European one, the Congolese child mining cobalt still gets nothing. The Chilean indigenous community whose water is stolen still gets nothing. European sovereignty is sovereignty for European capital, not for the global working class. A Mistral model trained on European languages and data is still a proprietary asset owned by a private company accountable to its venture capital investors. It will be deployed in ways that maximize shareholder value, not in ways that serve European workers and communities. If Mistral develops a French language AI assistant, it will charge French companies for access to it. It will train it on data extracted from French users. It will sell insights to advertisers and insurers. The cultural value of linguistic diversity is subordinated to the profit motive. There is also a global dimension to the European AI sovereignty debate that deserves attention. Europe's push for AI sovereignty is happening alongside similar pushes in India, Brazil, Japan, and other countries. Each of these projects is presented as a defense of national or regional interests against American tech dominance. But collectively, they represent a fragmentation of the global AI landscape along capitalist lines. Instead of a unified global effort to develop AI for the benefit of humanity, we get competing capitalist blocks, each building its own walled garden, each trying to capture the benefits of AI for its own ruling class. This fragmentation is dangerous. It leads to regulatory arbitrage, where companies shop for the most permissive jurisdiction. It leads to a race to the bottom on safety standards, where the imperative to compete overrides concerns about AI safety and ethics. It leads to the weaponization of AI, and inter-imperialist rivalries, where AI capabilities are seen through the lens of national security and military advantage. The AI Action Summit where von der Leyen spoke was not just about economics. It was about positioning European capital for the coming geopolitical competition over AI, a competition that will be fought as much in the military sphere as in the economic one. The narrative of European AI sovereignty relies on a fundamental deception, that there is such a thing as European capitalism with a human face. This is the myth of the social market economy, the idea that European capitalism is somehow more ethical, more regulated, more humane than the American or Chinese varieties. This myth serves to legitimate the exploitation of European workers while presenting it as something other than exploitation. European workers are still exploited. European corporations still extract surplus value. European states still serve the interests of capital. The AI sovereignty debate is a distraction from the real question, which is not whether Europe can build competitive AI, but whether AI can be built and deployed in a way that serves the working class and the planet. The answer to that question under capitalism is no. AI under capitalism will always be used to automate workers out of jobs, to intensify surveillance, to concentrate wealth and power. The form this takes may differ between the US and Europe, but the substance is the same. What would a genuinely progressive approach to AI look like? It would start from the premise that AI is a social product, built on collectively generated data and publicly funded research. It would recognize that the benefits of AI should be distributed according to need, not according to ownership. It would prioritize uses of AI that reduce working hours, improve healthcare, address climate change, and expand human capabilities, rather than uses that increase corporate profits and state surveillance. It would place AI development under democratic control, with workers and communities having a real say in how the technology is deployed. None of this is on the agenda of the European Commission or the AI Action Summit. Their agenda is about competitiveness, growth, and market share. These are the priorities of capital, not of labor. The working class has nothing to gain from European AI sovereignty. We will still be exploited, still be surveilled, still be displaced by machines. The only difference is that the profits will flow to European billionaires instead of American ones. The real sovereignty the working class needs is sovereignty over our own lives, our own labor, our own futures. That sovereignty cannot be achieved through capitalist competition. It requires the abolition of capitalism itself. It requires a system where technology is developed according to human need, not profit. It requires that the data centers, the algorithms, the computing power, all of it, belong to the people collectively, not to a handful of billionaires and their political representatives. Consider what a socialist approach to AI would actually look like in practice. First, all AI training data would be treated as a public commons, not a private resource to be extracted and monetized. The data generated by millions of European internet users, their searches, their posts, their photos, their messages, is collectively produced. Under capitalism, it is stolen by corporations and turned into products. Under socialism, it would be governed democratically, with clear rules about how it can be used and who benefits. Second, the computing infrastructure, the data centers, the chips, the energy, would be publicly owned and operated by workers, not by private companies accountable to shareholders. This would ensure that AI development serves social needs, not profit margins. Third, the algorithms themselves would be developed through public research institutions and worker cooperatives, not through venture capital funded startups that must prioritize growth and exit strategies over safety and social benefit. Fourth, decisions about which AI applications to deploy would be made through democratic processes that include workers, communities, and the people affected by them, not through corporate boardrooms or closed-door summits with heads of state and tech executives. None of this is on the table in the current debate. The entire discussion about European AI sovereignty takes the capitalist framework as given. The only question is which capitalist bloc gets to dominate. And that is precisely the point. The sovereignty debate is a debate among different factions of capital about how to divide the spoils of the AI revolution. The working class is not a participant in this debate. We are the raw material, the training data, the displaced labor, the consumers to be captured. We are not the subjects of AI sovereignty. We are its objects. Until we achieve that, the debate about European AI sovereignty will remain what it is, a cover for the accumulation of private capital under the banner of national pride. Von der Leyen and Mensch are not building a European AI for the European people. They are building a European AI for European capital. And the European working class will pay for it with our taxes, our data, our jobs, and our futures. Every euro that goes to subsidize a private AI gigafactory is a euro that could have gone to public housing, healthcare, education, or transit. Every hour that researchers spend optimizing algorithms for advertising revenue is an hour not spent solving the real problems facing working people: climate change, housing crises, inadequate healthcare, the shortening of the working day. The AI sovereignty project is a massive transfer of public resources to private interests, justified by nationalist rhetoric and sustained by the exclusion of working people from the decisions that affect their lives. The question is not whether Europe needs its own AI. The question is whether humanity needs capitalism. And the answer to that question is no.